So although I have traveled quite a lot solo, including to Myanmar, my very first trip abroad was to Canada when I was almost 30 years old. You see, when I was young, I was actually really shy and really lacking in confidence. And for most of my 20s and my teens, I just didn't really do anything. I just kind of let those years pass me by. But then I decided I really wanted to broaden my world and broaden my life. And one way I could do that is by taking a little adventure. And so I packed myself up and I drove up to Canada, to Nelson, BC, which is only about 2 hours away. Yeah, and it's a fabulous little town. Like, I absolutely loved it. I stayed at the Sleeping Bear Hostel, and I met a bunch of people, and we went out and had a great time, and I really just loved it. A year later, I went to India, or not India, geez, I've never been to India. The lies have already started. I went to Italy and to France, and then a year after that, I went to China. And just absolutely fell in love with travel. I cannot get enough of it. I love everything about it. I love the food. I love the people. I love all the new things that I see and do. I even love hanging out in the airport, which I know everybody thinks is very strange, but it's been really such an adventure. So fast forward about 15 years and 50 countries, and I make my way to Myanmar. Now, Myanmar, you might know as Burma, was a very repressive military dictatorship. And there's only been about a window of about 10 years where you could even travel there safely as a tourist. And that window has since closed. Like, the military took it back over and you can't go there now. But it was pretty safe when I went there. So when I first arrived, my first couple stops were really fun. I had really great time, lovely people, lots of really rich history and all of that, lot to see. So going to my third stop in Myanmar, I was going to Lake Inle, which is this gigantic inland lake surrounded by all these little villages. And you have to either fly or take an overnight bus to get there. So I'm kind of on a budget. I'm a teacher, so we don't have a lot of money. Sorry, I lost my place. So I take this overnight bus to this lake. The bus was really quite comfortable. It was a nice tourist bus. It's much more comfortable than an airplane, where you had like reclining seats and all of that. It had a nice bathroom and everything. It's just tourists on the bus. So it's in fact so comfortable that I put on my eye mask, I put in my earplugs, and I just conk out. Like, I sleep all night long on this bus, only to awaken to soldiers had boarded the bus and are demanding money. And I was by myself, so I hadn't woken up when they got on the bus. And they had already worked their way through the crowd and were like poking me and waking me up and saying, like, give us money. And I'm like frantically digging around, all disoriented, trying to find the money. And I procure money and they take it. And then, to my surprise, give me like a little business card with a picture of the town on it. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. So I take that and I put it in my wallet. And they leave. And we start chatting with the other tourists. But nobody's really alarmed. Like, this is like, they're like, it's okay. Like, don't worry about it. I'm like, okay. So we proceed to go into the town where they deposit us in kind of a town square. And there are men there gathered around with trucks to drive us places. And that's kind of how you get around here, is you get in the back of a pickup truck that has like benches on it and these bars you hold on to. And so I just joined up with some other tourists and I go to my hotel. And it's fine, like, that's a normal mode of transportation. So I spent a few days in this town just touring about, riding a bicycle all over the place, and taking a tour of the lake, and it's really very beautiful. So it comes time to leave, and you again can take a bus or fly. And I decide it's very beautiful, so I'm just gonna take a bus, but I wanna take a daytime bus so that I can kind of see the countryside. So they arranged that for me at my hotel. And the morning of my departure arrives, and I'm not feeling like really good at this point. It's a very developing nation, and the food supply is just questionable. So I've been trying to be very careful, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure I'm okay. But I need to get to my destination because I need to go home pretty soon. So my driver comes and picks me up, And again, I have to ride in the back of a pickup truck, like you just sit on this little bench, hold on to a rail. And he takes me out, not to where I had arrived into the town, but several miles further out to the highway. And there's just kind of this crossroads where it's a bunch of people with like carts and selling fruits and vegetables and some small shacks and that kind of thing, and people waiting for transportation. So kind of just a wide spot in the road. So we're waiting a few minutes, and I'm starting to feel like, gosh, I really think I need to go to the bathroom. Like, this is going to be a problem. And I ask, and he's like, no, just wait for the bus. So I'm like, okay. The other bus had a bathroom, so that'll be fine. So my bus finally comes, and my driver, gets me on the bus, and they put my bag under the bus. And as I'm getting on the bus, I noticed, first of all, that there's curtains all the way down the length of the bus, and they're all closed, so it's completely dark on this bus. And I'm like, well, that kind of sucks, because I'm on this bus because I want to see the countryside. But okay, so I'm boarding the bus, and the driver of the bus is leading me to my seat. And as I'm following him, I notice it's only men on the bus, and there's not a single woman or child on this bus. And this is not a tourist bus. Nobody's acting weird or anything, so I'm like, okay, just notable that that's what this is like here. So he leads me back to my seat and indicates a seat on the aisle. And I have kind of I know princess moment where I'm like, but I want to sit by the window because I'm on this bus so I can see outside. So he arranges it, and I get to sit by the window. And I'm kind of peeking out the curtain, and now we're going down the road. And I'm not feeling really great, and I start thinking, like, it's really empty and desolate out there, and what if I have to like run off this bus and like go get sick or drop a squat on the side of the road? There's like nothing there. There's no trees, there's no bushes, there's no shrubs, there's nothing, and there's no bathroom on this bus, and it's all men on this bus. And I'm just starting to sweat a little bit as I'm thinking about this. And then the man sitting next to me, who I had made move so I could sit on the window, had been chewing betel nut. And so betel nut is this red kind of pulpy nut that people chew like tobacco, but it's bright red. And he reaches up and he takes this plastic bag off the seat in front of him, and he spits this betel nut juice into the bag, and then hangs it back on the seat, and it's this bag full of red spit. And I just was like, I'm not gonna make it. Like, I'm totally gonna die on this bus. Like, I have to get off this bus. And so I make him get up, and I go to the front of the bus, and I'm like, just pull over, let me off the bus. And the driver pulls over and like, give me my bag, I need my bag. I'm not getting back on the bus. And so he gives me my bag, and I cross the highway, which is only 2 lanes and not a lot of traffic. It's not I-90, it's a little rural highway. So I cross the highway, and they drive away. And now I'm on the side of the road with my bag, and I'm just gonna walk back to town. So I'm like, I know where it is, it's just right down the road. Like, I've only been on the bus for 10 minutes, it can't be that far. So I start walking, and I hear this truck coming. And I've seen people do this, where you just wave to the truck, and the truck stops, and you get on the truck, and you go with the truck wherever it's going. And so I like wave, like, come get me. And the truck just goes past, and it's full of people, but they don't stop for me. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know. I've never actually done this before. So another truck comes by full of people, and I'm like, come get me, like, take me. And they just go by, and nobody stops. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna walk. So as I turn back around, I don't know how I hadn't seen this, but there's this man like right there, like standing on the side of the road, and he'd been taking a leak on the side of the road, and he's looking at me, and he's like, are you okay? And he speaks great English, and he's like, do you need a ride? And he's got a motorcycle. And it's like my whole life flashes before my eyes, and I'm like, I am like morally opposed to motorcycles. Like, I've never been on a motorcycle. And this country has no health care, and my phone doesn't work here, and nobody knows where I am because I checked out of my hotel and I left, and they think I'm gone. And nobody will care if I don't get to my next hotel. And then my mouth says, hell yeah, I need a ride. It's like, yes, I need a ride. Give me a ride. And so I first of all, I'm wearing a dress. I don't think I mentioned it. So I'm wearing a little sundress, and I have a backpack, luckily, and not a suitcase. So I just clamber on the back of this motorcycle, and I'm hanging on for dear life. Please don't kill me in this country. And he jets me off, and we go back to the crossroads where I had just been 10 minutes prior. And he says, no, I can't go into town. I'm going to go find you someone to take you into town. So he comes back a minute later with a farmer who did not speak English, and he's like, just pay this man this much money, and he's going to take you to your hotel. I'm like, wonderful, wonderful. So I pay the man the money, and the motorcycle driver drives away, and I follow the man, and he's indicates this truck, that I'm gonna ride on this truck. And so the truck, though, is a vegetable truck that has these giant sacks of potatoes and onions are all piled up. And so I have to climb up on top of these bags of vegetables in my sundress in front of this crowd of people where there are no tourists, by the way. There's 50 tourists in this whole town. It's completely devoid. In my dress. So I climb up on the back, and I have to hold on to this rail, on the cab of the truck, as he just goes jetting back into town, as fast as he can drive. He's driving in this town. It screeches to a halt in front of the soldier station. So now I have to get back off this truck to talk to the soldiers, because the soldiers are the tourist tax collectors. So luckily I have that little card, and I hadn't thrown it away, even though I didn't know what it was. And I show them the card, and they're like, oh yeah, it's cool, go ahead. So I have to climb back up on this truck in my dress in front of all these soldiers, and the driver jets me into town. And at the time, I'm kind of terrified, why are you driving so fast? But luckily he did, because when I got back to the hotel, they hadn't even cleaned my room yet. I've only been gone half an hour. And I know, it's crazy. So, and I got so sick. It's the sickest I've ever been. My body completely purged. And it was, you get sick when you travel. It happens. You all know it happens. But this was extra up here. So that goes on for a couple of days. And luckily the hotel people, it's a nice little family-run hotel, they took care of me like I was their child. They so nurtured me and made sure I had everything I needed until I got well. And then when I left, I flew away. I did not get back on that bus. It's I learned that lesson. And so now I always think it's if you know me, I've been to 55 countries now, and I have been a hot mess all over this planet. This is not unique. It's just kind of peak experience. And so I think about that when I think about when I was 30, less than 30, a little before 30, and I just really struggled to go to Canada, to go 2 hours away. And I think of how now, when I hear that story of Say Giroux, it's Say Giroux had this at 3, where she's just here I am, I'm going. And, it took me an extra 40 years to get there. But now, at some point along the line, with all this mayhem and mishaps of my travel, I found that. I found that confidence, and I stopped being afraid of everything and stopped being anxious all the time. And I think back to that 30-year-old who went to Canada, and that was such a big deal to go to Canada. And I just feel so much gratitude to that version of me who scraped herself together to go to Canada. And she didn't realize when she did that she was giving me the whole world. And now it's all I can go anywhere and do anything and know that I'm going to figure this out and be okay.